Welcome back to another episode of the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. I am your host, Melissa Grosboll, and joining me today is Lashelle Scott. And Lashelle is a breast cancer survivor, advocate, and policy ambassador. Diagnosed with stage 3 HER2 positive breast cancer in 2021, she champions awareness, equity, and legislation. She founded the Hope Project Initiative and serves as a Susan G. Komen and American Cancer Society Policy Ambassador, board member of the Texas Southern University Breast Cancer Board, and peer reviewer for the Congressional Breast Cancer Review Panel. Outside advocacy, she works as a political consultant and rescues huskies. She holds a BS in criminal justice, a BA in business, and a master's in project management, and a graduate of Yale University Campaign School. So welcome to the show, Lashelle.
Well, thank you, Melissa, for having me.
Wow, what an impressive bio. I am very excited to dig into all of this.
Excited
But
to be here.
but first I have to ask something completely unrelated. Tell me about your husky rescue. Because I am a huge dog lover, so I want to hear about that.
It's wild. Well, someone told me that huskies are my spirit animal, and I think that is true. I can't even remember what made me gravitate towards them. And my grandmother loved dogs, and I saw them. I was like, "Oh, I want one," and I got one. Got my first one in 2008, not 2009. Sparkles was my first one, and I bought Sparkles when I was living in Washington, D.C. And me and Sparkles, we've been together we were together for 9 years, and she passed away. Then I rescued Gracie. She was found in a church parking lot, so I named her Gracie after the song Amazing Grace. And she passed away from anal sarcoma, which I didn't know dogs could have cancer as well, which was a hard journey, but I ended up rescuing another dog. I've had 4 huskies. Um,
Aww.
so Ethel was my other baby, and she came along. Her dad had moved to Colorado, and I said, okay, I will take care of her and just love on her. And we were together for 4 years until she passed away from diabetes. I didn't know dogs can have diabetes, so I had to learn to administer insulin to her. Then came along Bartholomew, and Bartholomew was a patron saint. And I said, you know what? I said, and I saw Bart's picture before I saw Bart. And I said, you know what? He looks like a Bartholomew. And he came in, he was my first boy dog, and just kind of took over and just like, this is my house, and you're just living here.
You're here to
Natural
feed me and
flirt.
walk me, and that's it, right?
Yeah, natural flirt. He loved women. He had to stop every woman he saw and just like love on me, rub me, I'm cute. And he liked his little bow ties. And Bart passed away this year from he was found in a park, and I guess the people that had Bart before didn't give him his heartworm preventives. So it's just a lesson in that pet parents need to be more proactive in giving their babies heart guard, because Bart had congestive heart failure, and by the time that we got him to the vet, he had fluid in his lungs, and the vet told me that he was not gonna make it, even if we tapped the fluid. And I just had to make that decision. So now it's just me for now, and I have people like, "You want another husky? You want another husky?" And I don't know. Some days I feel like I miss the companionship, and I really would like to continue on, because they always end up in the shelters, and I know that I'm supposed to take in another husky. Um, so we'll see how that goes.
I fully believe that we don't deserve dogs. And the only problem with having dogs is that they don't live long enough. So bless you for, taking on these animals. I mean, we always hope that they live a long life, and it sounds like, other than your first one, they haven't really, and it just takes such a beautiful person to be able to, be with an animal that is sick or, on the way out. And it's just probably the hardest thing that I've ever done is, having to put animals down, because it just sucks.
Oh, it really does. And I always made sure I was there holding them and loving them in their last moments, because I know with Ethel and Bart, they have definitely seen me at my worst. And Ethel knew I had breast cancer, I think, before I knew. And so they were really there moments I was sick. They were my exercise partners. So for me, I didn't see any other way with just being there for them. I know some pet parents can't be in the room, but I was like, no, I'm going to be there. I want them to know that I'm here. And I just want them to know that I love them to the bitter end. I'm sorry.
That's okay. That is one of the things that I just don't understand. And that's just me, is, pet parents who will leave their pets alone at the end. I don't understand it at all. We've had someone come out to the house. We have a vet who will actually come out to the house and, and euthanize the animals here so they can stay at home and, and be with us the whole time. And I wouldn't have it any other way, but it's not for everybody. I try and understand, but I really don't. So, all right, let's move on to, I don't know if that's happier thoughts or not. So take us back to 2021. Take us back to, when you were diagnosed. Tell us a little bit about that story of your diagnosis, and, how you got through your treatment.
Ooh, well, January 2021, I was taking a shower and I had a sharp pain in my chest. So I was reaching my arm up and I was like, that feels weird. Why is this? And I looked, something made me look down and I noticed like the left side of my breast, my breast area was red. And I was like, maybe I'm taking a hot shower. Maybe it's from the water. And then the pain just kind of intensified. And I was like, okay, maybe I could just take some Tylenol or something and the pain would go away. Well, it did not. And I was like, okay, what do I need to do? I said, maybe I need to just go see an OBGYN. OBGYN said, I think you have a mass. You need to look for a breast surgeon. I was like, hold on. How did this become this? And so, long story short, because I didn't have insurance and because I'm a contractor or a temp, a seasonal worker, I was like, okay, how am I going to pay for this? And I had to just try to figure out a way to come up with money to get it done. I started looking for breast surgeons online in Houston, and I
You
found
didn't even
one.
get a referral from your OBGYN to one?
I didn't get a referral to my for because I found a OBGYN, but he wasn't my doctor because I didn't
Okay.
have a primary care. I didn't have insurance. So she was like, the only way you can come in my office, you have to go get a mammogram and then we can have a conversation. And I was like, wait a minute, this went to cutting the lump out to potentially I need to go get a mammogram. And it was the crazy thing is like months before I saw the mammogram truck. Um, and I was like, okay, I know this is a sign I need to go get a mammogram. And October, November are my busiest months because of September, October, November, because it's election season and I work on campaigns. And so I was like, and I put it off in October. And so I had to look around and find a place where I can go get a mammogram. And found a place, got in, and I have dense breasts, so I had to get a 3D mammogram and a sonogram. And I was like, okay, never had this before. So speed up to February 2021, right before we had our power grid failure here in Texas. It was actually the day before. The place that did my mammogram and everything called me, and they told me that I already felt it, and I remember what I was wearing, and I remember the time of day. I remember what I was doing, and they told me that I had breast cancer. They called me on the phone and told me what I needed to do, and I was just like, okay, what do I do? My first thought was, how was I going to pay for this? It's a Friday afternoon at 3:45. Everything is closed or getting ready to close. How I'm going to process this, and then they're talking about this storm that's about to hit Houston. So I had 2 weeks before the city opened back up because, of course, we had that massive power failure, and I had to leave my apartment. Me and Ethel had to leave my apartment because it was all electric and go stay with someone because I didn't have any power, no hot water, anything. It took me 2 weeks to get back in and find someone. I was like, I don't have health insurance. So I signed up for the ACA. It had a special enrollment because also it was the height of COVID as well. So I had those two. I had all of that working against me. But long story short, I was able to get insurance, get in with the breast surgeon. By the time I saw her, I already knew the staging and all of that thing. And she was like, okay, I got to send you back because we got to do the biomarker testing and stuff. So I had to go through all of that. And it had actually traveled up into my lymph nodes. And I was like, oh, wow, this is a lot more than just a lump. And what am I going to do? My main thing in all of this, like, how am I going to pay for this? Who's going to pay for this? Cancer treatment is very expensive. And I just kept going. And Ethel was like looking at me like, it's going to be okay, Mom. And she would just tilt a little head like, it's going to be all right. And so for me, that kind of made me okay about not just breaking down. Because my main thing was like, I got to get through this. And I'm just thinking in my mind, it's gone from a lump to cancer. Now you're talking about stage 3 cancer. And you're talking about it spread up into my lymph nodes. So I was like, during the height of COVID, I got to move fast. Things are shut down. I'm immune compromised already. So what am I going to do? Um, so I got all that stuff done and went back in the doctor's office and the surgeon. And we started talking the game plan. And I met my oncologist, which was the floor down for me at the time. And we came up with a plan. And it started out with, you're going to have this aggressive chemo, then surgery to remove the mass if we got to remove the mass, and then you're going to go to radiation. Well, no one ever talked about the plan changing, so I wasn't prepared for that. I just like, okay, I can do all these things and go back out here and knock like 100 doors like I normally do. Wrong.
How did it
Everything,
change?
it really changed. And not only did my plan change, I was really sick during this entire journey. I've been in the hospital. I've lost count how many times I've been in the hospital. I was actually in the hospital this year. And my chemo turned into, surgery, and then we started talking about a mastectomy, and I was like, hold on. We never discussed me having a breast removed, and my surgeon was trying to race against the clock because everything was shutting down because of COVID. And I had to make these life changing decisions. at the drop of a dime, and it was just me, and I was like, how am I going to do this? And it's still like, oh, okay, who's paying these medical bills? Because I know my insurance is paying, but how am I going to pay? And my radiation turned into immunotherapy because I had a BRCA2G, and also my breast cancer was hormonal, and I didn't realize there were so many different subtypes of breast cancer. So I was learning all of this stuff on the fly, including learning how to navigate insurance, red tape. It was a lot. It has been a lot. And I was like, if I'm going to go through all this, I'm going to share my story, and I'm going to talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm not a sugarcoater, so I'm going to tell it all. The first thing to go was my hair. My hair used to go all the way down my back. First chemo appointment, lost all my hair, eyebrows, everything. My eyebrows are still just hanging on, and no one talked about a cold cap, but it was already too late because the first treatment took my
It's
hair
gone.
off, and I just noticed different things when I would go to chemo, how patients were getting different types, and what their insurance was paying for. I had issues with my insurance not wanting to pay, and it was a lot. I changed oncologists in the process. Also developed type 2 diabetes, lymphedema, neuropathy. It has been a lot on this journey. Um,
Wow.
but I'm still here ticking. So
And I
I said,
see your shirt says hope, which is
and and that's my word, hope, because I tell people all the time, because people will ask all the time, well, when will you be done? When will you be done? I'm like, I said, unless you're like a stage one, there's really no done. You're always gonna have to get scans. You're always gonna have to do this. And my plan continues to change. I take medication and for maintenance because mine was hormonal. And like I tell people all the time, you can't cut your hormones out. So for me, I just have to keep going with this, and I have to keep talking about it. And I notice I'm in Texas, the policy is not matching what's going on here, especially saying that we are the world renowned Texas Medical Center. We have the best health care, but the access is hard.
so
So I
talk about
said,
that a little bit more. What do you mean by that? I mean, I know what you mean by world renowned. You have MD Anderson and all of the things down there, but what do you mean by access is hard?
well, if you have money, you have the best access. But also just the policy part of getting the Affordable Care Act. We don't have a healthcare exchange here, and I went through the system because they do have like Medicaid, Medicare for breast cancer. However, every time I qualify, we have to requalify for the ACA. They send the data back to Texas, and Texas says, well, no, she doesn't qualify for it. So that made me start digging more about how the policy is antiquated and doesn't match the need, because the stats here are 1 in 8. So if you count me and you count Harris County has, I think, like 2.5 million people in it. You do that 1 in 8, that's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people.
That's a lot of people. And someone like me, MD Anderson does not have a program where they would take my insurance. But MD Anderson is not close to me either. So I go, my oncologist they're in an area where it's situated into a hospital, which was fine with me, because at least I know if I get sick, they can just take me right on over to the other side and admit me in. But the policy does not match the need, and we are on the brink of a healthcare crisis in this country. And just knowing what's currently going on, and people are kind of starting to wake up like, oh, I kind of see. But yeah, it's been a problem for a while, and it's definitely a problem here.
So what do
Every
you mean
time there's
you don't have a healthcare exchange? I thought that all states had that was a big piece of the Affordable Care Act. So how do you
what
access the Affordable Care Act without a healthcare exchange in your state?
we have to go, the way that the healthcare exchange is set up is they go around the system in Texas, and then they send it to um, the federal government. So there are certain states that don't have a market, a healthcare exchange market, and
Huh.
Texas is one of those states. So what they do is like you go and apply on, say, it's time to renew. I go to the healthcare exchange website and I put in my information, and it'll tell me, okay, well, we have to contact your state to see if they'll offer you Medicaid, Medicare, or public health or whatever. And so they'll send my information back to Texas, and then Texas will come back and say no, and then they'll send it back to them and say no, she doesn't qualify for state health. So that's how I get my insurance,
Wow.
and
That
that's how it works for states that don't have like a quote unquote marketplace.
And how many states do not have one? I mean, Colorado, we have one here. My daughter's on it. But how many states don't have it? Do you know?
I I don't know, but I'm pretty sure it's
It's
the
more than it
states that
should be, right?
it's more than it should be. And I tried to explain it to someone. I said, yeah, so every year I have to go through this process of applying again on the healthcare exchange website, and then they'll come back to Texas and ask them. They'll send my data back to Texas, and public health or whatever it's called, Texas Health. They'll come back and say no, she doesn't qualify for health care in Texas, and the exchange will come back and say, well, we'll give you health care, and you pick your policy, and they'll send it over to, like, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield of Texas, and a policy is set with them, and then it takes about a month.
Oh my gosh.
It doesn't automatically go into effect. It's a process, and then they'll wait for like the tax credits. It's a whole process.
Wow.
So the tax credits go separately back to the Blue Cross Blue Shield or whoever you get, and then Blue Cross will mail you a card, and it'll have effective date of like the following month. So I have to wait like a month before I can use my health insurance card.
So that shifts into what you actually do as a policy advocate. So is that kind of what, talk to us a little bit about your advocacy with, Susan G. Komen and the American Cancer Society.
Well, I didn't really understand the policy aspect of breast cancer or cancer until I guess it quote unquote happened to me. And I was already one of those people, like, if I saw a bill in the ledge or on the federal level, I would call my representatives and say, hey, this is important. Why? XYZ, XYZ. So I take that in my political experience, and I talk about this bill is currently sitting in Congress, HR, blah, 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 or, a Senate bill that's sitting in the Senate, or here in Texas, House bill in Texas, XYZ. This is why this is important, and this is why we need these things. I talk about bills that relate to funding, like we have the Cancer Research Institute in Texas, and their funding was about to run out this year. So I went with the American Cancer Society and lobbied. Was it February, March? The months of it was this earlier this year for them to get funding because the federal level funding had been cut. So they were due to expire here too on the state level. So I went and lobbied about funding for that because it's important, because the research part is definitely very, very important, because you can't get to a cure if you don't have that funding. Susan Komen, this is my first time lobbying with them um, in April, and I really enjoyed myself the summit, and I learned a lot and got to talk to representative staffers, and I told my story, and I talked about the breast cancer, um, the Congressional Breast Cancer Researcher organization, the component in the Department of Defense, and a lot of people didn't know, including the staffers, didn't know that the DoD does biomedical research for
I didn't
breast
know that
cancer.
either.
And I didn't know as well, but I do stuff with another organization called Tiger Lily, and they were looking for advocates to sit on the peer review board. I put my name in. I said they probably not gonna reach out to me, and they actually did. And I actually just served, and this is my second year serving. But it gives me an insight on what's coming out in the pipeline, and why research funding is important, why lobbying policy is important, and why I continue to do the work that I do, because I
Well,
know
I
there
have
are
a
thousands.
question for you. Just
Okay.
don't mean to interrupt. So, I hear about lobbying, I hear about people going and advocating, and, we always hear about, oh, if there's something that you don't agree with at a local level, state level, whatever, call your representatives, email them. But then I also hear, they're going to do what they're going to do, and it doesn't really matter what you say or do. So tell me how, I guess, if it makes a difference, and I'm sure it depends, but, does lobbying and advocating and reaching out to your representatives, does it really make a difference? And I'm being very cynical about our government, but I'm just really curious because I see that and go, my voice isn't going to make any difference. They probably have already made up their mind. So kind of tell me, does it make a difference if you reach out to your representatives?
I believe we got to keep trying.
Okay.
Um, I'm one of those people, if I get knocked down, I may sit down for a little bit, but I'll get back up. And so I look at my own, journey with this. I just got to keep getting back up. I had a situation. I'll just use the situation I had this year. I was having migraines, and I was very dizzy, and I just kept, I had to be hospitalized, and I couldn't stand up, and I couldn't walk, and I had to learn how to walk again. And my whiteboard said, "Go lobby in D.C. with Susan Komen." So I would see that every day, and they would talk about it in physical therapy, and I had to learn how to use it. I started out in a wheelchair, and then I slowly just built my endurance back up. So just using that as an example is why I continue to do this.
It's a good motivator for you.
It's a good motivator, and I think it's, even in this current environment, we still have to push back. We still have to push back, and we still got to keep going. Some folks want you to give up and not do anything, and that's how they win. But it's called public service for a reason. You're supposed to serve the public.
Yeah, I think a
And
lot of
why I
them have
keep
forgotten that.
and, yeah, I'm in Texas, so I still have to get up and say, "Oh God," I still have to just try to talk on these things and do these things. Even with voting here, I still just have to get up and do what I need to do, and talk to people and say, "Hey, this is important, and why we got to keep doing," even if they're gonna do what they plan to do. And sometimes I just continue to hope that things will change.
Okay. Now, you said you were a political consultant, or you are a political consultant. And so talk to me a little bit about, I guess, the shift, because you said that, you had been an election worker or a campaigner before you were diagnosed. And then Did you always champion healthcare? Did you always, work on campaigns about healthcare, or did that kind of change with your, your cancer journey?
It changed with my cancer journey because I was a field organizer and a precinct chair. I still have those titles, and I still get out the vote. We're currently in an election cycle here in Houston now, and
I think there's
so
always an election cycle of some kind.
it truly is.
Yeah.
And for me, I still do those things, but the block walking and the door knocking, I don't do those anymore. Um, but I still do. But I love policy work, and I love lobbying. I love talking about important pieces of legislation. So I was like, oh, I really like this. I know some advocates do different things, and for me, I like the work. The
Well,
work that's so important. So I'm like, okay, we can have 1,000 events during breast cancer awareness months. We can have a ton of walks. We can have all these brunches. But if we don't change the policy, nothing will ever change. And
that's
so
very true.
that's how I look at it. And I'm like, okay, and I'm afforded opportunities like sitting here with you today, this morning. So for me, I was like, okay, yeah, this is something I'm supposed to do. And before my mom passed, we had talked about this, and she heard me actually on the Zoom call while I was talking about how to navigate policy in this environment, and she told me she was proud of me to keep
Aw,
doing the
that's
work.
sweet. I love that. And and it's something that, I mean, I talk to cancer survivors every week, and we talk about all of the things regarding that, but this is something that we don't really talk about because most people take for granted, okay, if I get cancer, like the biggest thing I have to worry about is my
Hello.
treatment. And I mean, it's a big thing, and you have to worry about your treatment and go through all of that, but we don't really talk about, and you said it in the beginning, like the first thing I thought about was, how am I going to pay for this? And like most of us take for granted that, hey, we have insurance and we don't have to worry about that. But it's like stress is such a big piece of cancer, and they tell you to reduce your stress. But we have this whole issue of people out there who have to worry about being able to pay for this. And there are people out there that are going without treatment and going without care because they can't afford it. And we need to do something about that, because we shouldn't have to worry about whether or not we can pay for it. We just need to worry about getting the treatment and getting well. I
Worry
love the
about
fact that you're here talking about that, because it's something that we don't talk about enough. We need to, this needs to be a bigger issue, and letting people know that, like, being able to pay for healthcare is almost as big of an issue.
Yes, I agree because I'm currently facing that challenge even more now. If we do not save the subsidies for the healthcare exchange, I did get a quote for what my insurance policy would look like next year, and I can't see paying close to $2,000 for
Oh my.
insurance a month.
So, say what you will about your government, what side of the aisle you are on, what you believe, what you agree with, what you don't agree with. People need health care, and they need to be able to afford it.
Yes, patients like me, um, I think about all the medication I'm taking, and I'm like, do I just try to? Is there a way I try to just buy what I can, just to have enough? And what does that look like? And how much could I afford? Um, it's expensive, especially tacking on being a diabetic. It's expensive as well. I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I was supposed to have a procedure this year, actually two, which is now, been canceled. And next year I have a big question mark and an exclamation mark. So I'm hoping. at least by December that something's in play where we can save the subsidies because they do actually work in healthcare. You should not have to go into debt to save your life. And I don't think people really understand that part. Just because you
And you
don't get,
shouldn't have to forego treatment because you can't afford it.
right. And just because you're not sick today, or your kid is not sick today, or your spouse, doesn't mean that they won't get sick tomorrow or a week from now.
So speak to your representatives, talk to your government, make your voice known, because people need us to champion on their behalves. And I love the fact that you're out there lobbying and advocating and talking to people and getting this message out, because it is so important in today's climate. And always, like, there's always going to be a fight over something regarding healthcare or policy, and it's as important as ever right now.
I agree. Hoping
All
for
right,
a better
Lashelle.
future.
Yes, absolutely. And we keep hope and keep trucking on. So, Lashelle, where can people find you if people want to reach out to you, if they want to find out more information about, volunteering or lobbying or getting involved, or just want to talk to you about your story? How can people find you? What's the best way?
I'm on Facebook, my government name. You can find me on Instagram, Senator North Star 2021. You can also email me at the Hope Project um dot gmail.com. And hey, I'm looking at teaching a class on how to write policy and understand policy for a layperson, especially for patients and patient advocates, because I think one thing is, I think that scares a lot of the public off and patients, is understanding and reading policy.
Absolutely. Wow, that's a great idea. And we will link all of that information into the show notes as well for people, so they don't have to write things down like crazy and rewind and what did she say? Um, so, shall I ask all of my guests one question at the end? And it's this: if you were to come across someone who was just recently diagnosed, or they're just in the midst of overwhelm of a diagnosis, whether it's breast cancer or any kind of cancer, what is one piece of advice that you would give them to kind of help them through this initial stage and the overwhelm that comes with it?
First, take a step back and breathe. Find out what your options are as far as what your policy would pay for. Um, don't get stuck on the initial plan because plans change. Um, Make sure you ask a lot of questions. My oncologist gave me like this. It's a big binder, and I show this binder all the time because it's a lot of information at one time. And I keep the binder as a reminder to, like, oh my God, I mean, this is a lot of information. Ask a lot of questions, record notes. If you're not comfortable with the answer you're getting from the initial oncologist or care team, find someone else. I ended up changing oncologists, but it was like 2 years later. Um, but you are your best advocate. You are your best advocate. But first, breathe.
I love that. That is probably 12 great pieces of advice and gets through the initial process. That is absolutely perfect. And I agree with every single piece of it. So thank you so much for your time, Lashelle, today. I really appreciate it. This is a really important conversation that needs to be had and needs to be out there. And I appreciate you taking the time to share your story with us today.
Thank you, Melissa, for the opportunity.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.